on.
Do it. I dare you.
3 weeks into it, we're almost there. We're 5 days out. And he says, "Where's Al?" By the coffee pot. So stand up. So I stand up and he goes, "Look, we're almost there. What are we going to do when we get there? What are you going to do?" Same, "Skipper, I'm going to be the first one down the gangplank. I'm going to commandeer a Jeep. I'm going to go to the officers club, talk to the manager, the food guy, the bar guy, and the dancing person, right? And he goes, "Okay, so what are we going to eat?" Mind you, I'm the only Mexican in the squadron, right? Got this big black mustache.
Tacos.
Right? Exactly. I said, "I don't know, Skipper, tacos?" Oh my God. He does an about face, grabs the eraser, TACO. And I go, "Skipper, no, not that one." "Skipper, not that one, okay?" And all the guys are going, "Yeah, that's perfect." That's his call sign.
Oh my God.
Yep.
So,
go.
and I thought, well, they'll forget about that.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
How'd that work?
Boy.
Yeah. How's that work for you for the next 30 years, right?
Exactly. All right.
All right. Well, I'm going to disappear into the background, okay?
Sounds good.
Nice to miss you. Bye.
Chat with you soon. So we're going to have some media here. Let me find it. So we're going to have a song come in, and it's going to sound like this.
This here is a true story about.
And when he gets to the end, you're going to hear, "So there I was crossing the pond," and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond. As soon as we hear the word fond, if you would come in with a 30-second, 45-second, "So there I was," tease us and tee it up for us, and we'll be good to go. And then I'm trying to think what else. That'll do it. And then we'll introduce you. We'll come back to you in the to beginning of your career, talking about not wanting to do 14 weeks of PLC among everything else. And then about 45 minutes in, we're going to run a brief ad, which will last about 2 minutes or so. And then and so you'll have time to make a quick head call if you want. And then we'll wrap it up somewhere after that. So,
sounds great.
All right. I think, reset the timer to 0. I have. So here we go.
Quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting.
This here is a true story about crossing the pond at night in the world's smallest cockpit, on the tanker, through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that, thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond.
So there I was, descending out of 15,000 feet, approaching the mouth of Haiphong Harbor in my trusty F-4 Phantom after an extended combat mission just east of Hanoi, and I had no fuel. I was reading 0 on the tape and 0 on the counter, and I was trying to remember what was the tolerance on those gauges. What was the plus or minus to 0? And I looked down and saw the gunboats coming out of the yards, and I thought, you know what? That was my first serious conversation with God. And I thought, it's up to you, Lord. I've done all I've been able to do to get out over the water. I've had my backseater get ready to eject. And they say there's an A6 tanker coming downhill the speed of heat, and that maybe he'll get to us. He's doing about 500. I've got to be at 270 for the tanker. And how in the world is he going to go from 23,000 feet to 15,000 feet, slow down, coming downhill to 270 knots and park his airplane right in front of me. And here I am.
He did it. Oh,
He did it.
whoa.
Oh.
And he did it.
Oh.
The left engine was coughing a little bit, some compressor stalls. The airplane was yawing a little bit. And fortunately, I remembered the switch position for in-flight refueling, where the position that we never used would allow for the extension of the probe, but then the fuel would go directly into the number one engine, right? That is gravity fed. When I hit the probe there into the basket, the left engine was starting to unwind. And as soon as I started to flicker in the cockpit master caution, I got fuel transfer.
Oh my gosh.
He gave me 6,000 pounds. When I pulled off, I called off with 5.4. I'd used 600 gallons, 600 pounds in the in-flight refueling process. So I had to call it. After I called it, the commanding officer of the USS Saratoga came on the radio, and he said, "Wagon 2, say your fuel state again." And I said, "Saratoga, Wagon 2, I'm now 5.2. Silence. He comes back about 10 seconds later, and he said, "Call me by my call sign." He said, "Taco, come home, son. Come home." They had been observing this ever since I was a tar cap, pulled off the target, joined the MiG cap. His airplane had gone down. This wingman had gone down. So the mistake that was made was that he accepted a vector to 3 MiGs that were coming out of Hanoi, out of Kep Field, when I was already below bingo when I joined on. When he called Judy out, meaning, that I've got him on radar, he called for mini burner to get rid of the smoke trail. You got to be kidding me.
That
Right.
was
You got to be kidding me. So
terrifying stuff.
I gave the emergency exit call, whatever that word was, and almost banged his wing screen in my turn outbound, and that's where the real trouble began. I think I had 11 surface to air missiles fired at my airplane, and so that there was a lot of evasion and in and out of AAA, and that was all that was burning the fuel in my airplane, all the introduced drag with all the turns and escapes and stuff. When we landed on the ship, I had to refuel again. I was met at the bottom of the stairs by the CAG and the commanding officer of my squadron, commanding officer of the Yellowtail. The guy that led me in there was not in my squadron. It was a sister squadron. They gave me a direct order to go to my stateroom and not to come out until they called me. They were afraid that I was going to pull my .38 and shoot the guy.
Oh my gosh.
They were afraid I was going to go to his airplane and just beat the heck out of him. But that never occurred to me. I was just happy to be alive, right? And
Right.
the next morning, that poor guy was gone. God came over, picked him up, and took him to Saigon. They sent him home.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and he was a pretty significant person as well in terms of preparation to be there, career, and all that. But it was over for him. But that was one of the most interesting episodes that I had of several when I was over there in Vietnam. And there have been many others. As you guys know, you've talked to guys before that, I have coined a phrase through the years, a belief that in combat, you're marginally in control and in charge of nothing. Just in charge of nothing. Right?
Well, there's a show title right there. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to show 205. So there I was, repeat coming to you from New Hampshire today. Big, you appear to be at home. Is that correct?
I got home about 12 hours ago, and yes, it's our pleasure to have with us today. Well, I guess we could just honestly say a naval aviation legend, and a piece of Texas Aviation Hall of Fame
history. Yeah,
Al
class of 2025.
Cisneros, aka Taco. Wow, that's a hell of a "so there I was" opener, sir. I am excited to hear all the rest of your stories. For crying out loud!
Can I say something about the induction? That Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
thing?
Yes,
please.
I'm going to borrow from a great line in Top Gun Maverick, right?
Yeah.
The point where Tom Cruise says, "That's one of life's great mysteries."
One of life's great mysteries, sir.
That's one of life's mysteries, sir.
Well, that's because you possess a quality that true leaders have. That's called humility, and that's
right.
That's why. Yeah.
Thank you. There's a funny story when I got the call. Right, I thought they were calling me to make a contribution to the
yeah, looking for a donation.
Always want money.
So and I'm at work here on my computer, and I'm working on sending an email to some company, right? And I'm listening, but I'm not really listening. So Jerry, the ops person, says, "Al, what do you think?" And I'm going, "Oh goodness, how much money do they want? What is it? What has he said?" And I said, "Well, would you please just tell me again what you need?" And he says, "We're inviting you to be inducted into the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame." Al, what do you think? Well, sir, I don't know what to think. Right. And let me say this before we get further into that event. And I said it in my induction speech, and I'll say it always, that there are many, many more pilots that are more qualified than I am to be there. I know them. I've flown with them. I've admired them, and they are more deserving, I think, than I am to be in that hall. The other thing that I did say in that induction speech after I said that was that I said, "Folks, I'm standing here by myself, but I'm not alone. Now, I'm not alone. I am standing here with all of the people that I grew up with, that taught me how to be a better person, that pulled me and pushed me and counseled me and corrected me and got angry with me and told me that I maybe couldn't do what I was trying to do. But they never gave up."
Fantastic.
And that is the reality of an induction, that everybody that's in there. I was the 100th entrant into the hall. So you can imagine the number of people that are, the quality of individuals that are there.
Oh, yeah.
And the hall is about 4 different categories of aviation renown, and be it admin or airport management or innovation, research, astronaut, NASA, and all of that. And so to be included, obviously, is just to me, again, one of life's great mysteries.
Spoken like a true leader. Thank you. Well, I'm excited to hear more stories from your career, and I did watch the I think it was a YouTube repeat that you sent me about the induction of Al into the Texas Aviation Hall of Fame. But there's that was highlights. And then, oh my gosh, your opener, "So there I was" story. I'm sweating. I'm going to have to pull this hoodie off in a second. My palms were sweating because I was there. So, okay, you finished the RAG. And what year was that? 1970?
I finished in 1972, early 72. Yeah. And finished the TYTs for the Saratoga from the RAG. And then as soon as those are completed, the Saratoga went back in the yard, cleaned itself up, and then did another TYT before we all loaded on the ship. And so that's where I joined BF-31 in that last TYT.
Can we back up just a little bit? I'm so sorry. Yeah. I jumped ahead. So I saw you had you were standing from a T-34. It looked like a Bravo, and then the T-2. And did you also fly? What were we flying TA-4s as the advanced jet trainer then? Okay. So were there any memorable flight school stories that you recall that kind of shaped your future?
Absolutely.
Oh, let's hear.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that was happening at the time was in Pensacola, you soloed and they gave you a little solo bar, and then you had to go back to school for 6 weeks to finish your commissioning. And from the time that I soloed to the time that I checked into BT-7 to fly the T-2 was almost 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I hadn't touched an airplane.
That's not unsafe or anything.
Well, and then to get into a jet, right? Or on a mask, right?
Right.
Not being able to see anything. I was overwhelmed. I don't mind telling you. And my first two instructors were leaving the squadron. One of them was on extended leave as soon as he flew 2 or 3 flights with me. The next guy had no interest in teaching me anything. And I understood it because he was going to the fleet. He was finally going to be a fleet pilot. He was a Sir grad, right? So then I couldn't find get an instructor because summertime had come in and things were changing in BT-7 and change of command, reorganization. And I'd sit in the ready room waiting for an instructor. When I finally got one, good guy, he had just come out of the fleet. He'd been an A4 pilot. And I remember one day at the end of the runway, we were at the RDO card, and I was way behind the program. And we had been up a couple of times, and we hadn't been able to get to no flap landings in the T2. We're in Meridian. And I didn't do well, on that particular flight, the second time with him. So the next day we were at the RDO cart, and he's smoking a cigarette, and he looks over his shoulder and says, "Can I talk to you?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Does it ever occur to you that some people are not cut out to do this?"
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope, never occurred to me.
Nope. No, sir. Never had that thought.
So
thanks for asking.
Oh, yeah. But the interest, God works in amazing ways,
Oh, yeah.
I went to Vietnam, came back. And when I came back, I was doing part of a COMPEX, competitive exercise. I was doing the missile shoot, right? And the fighter wing commander, great guy, was the observer and the grader, right? And so I walk into the room, to the radar room with this mock Sparrow, on a cart. And I turn around and look into the audience, and that same guy, the same instructor was sitting there. He had just checked into the F4 RAG, and I looked and said, "Larry, how are you?" And he looks at me, "Is that you, Al?" I said, "Yes, sir." And I was in my khakis, I had my ribbons, my war ribbons,
Yeah.
And I went over and shook his hand. He says, "Well, you've done well." I'm still hanging in here, so.
Yeah, still hanging in. So I'm guessing that his conversation with you that day was like trying to soften you up to the idea that maybe, he didn't think you were going to cut it. Is that how you took it?
Yeah. He was inviting me to go home.
Embrace the idea that this wasn't going to be for you.
Yeah. Go back to
my
Nebraska.
God.
Go back to Brownsville, Texas, kid.
Oh
So,
man.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
You know, we didn't circle back that much from that. So you said go back to Brownsville, Texas. That's obviously from whence you came. When did you first look up in the sky and go, yeah, maybe something I could do?
Well, you know how we are as kids, guys. You know, we
Sure.
we have dreams, you know, and we have little visions, and as a little kid, you know, you will favor soldiers and little jeeps and tanks, or cowboys, you know, and Indians, and in those formative times, you know, you start to have this great imagination. And when I talk to the youngsters, you know, and I do that as often as I can, I connect into their dreams, you know, because I was able to succeed for my dreams that came true. I remember in our little house, no air conditioning, you know, summertime, I would go right by my bed was this little screen that I could open, right? And I'd get my head out there on the ledge and be looking up at the stars at night, hoping that I would see an airplane go by, you know, and I'd see the stars and all of that. And then at times I'd say, hey, Mom, I wake her up, Mom, I'm going to go outside and lay on the grass. Okay. Okay, Mijo. Okay. If it rains, come in. Okay, Mom. So, so I'd lay it down on the grass, you know, and be staring at the stars. And every now and then I'd see an airplane at altitude. And I'd always wonder, where's it going? The same thing was about a train that was in a yard several blocks from our house, and I could hear the engine coupling the cars, you know, and I think, I wonder where that train is going. So that began the curiosity, you know, about transportation, flight, other places in the world, you know, and then when it really hit was when I was in college in Austin, and I guess you guys know I was a janitor in a church. The second job that I had of several, but I'd go to the rectory and I'd mop, you know, and clean it up, you know, for Sunday mass, and
Sure.
Bergstrom Air Force Base was no more than maybe a mile and a half away from the church, and the F4s would come do a right base to land south, and they fly right over the rectory, you know, gear and flaps down, you know, and I think, oh my God, that is just going to be the greatest thing in the world. And undeterred, I remember one of the airplanes had an issue, and they either flamed out or whatever, right there at the 90, just past the rectory. The pilots shelled out of the airplane. And undeterred, it didn't matter to me. I remember going over where it was, you know, roped off and saw the thing. I thought, you know, this is interesting. This is amazing. That's what I want to do. And there began the research about, you know, where am I going to do this, right? Sure. And of course, luck would have it, and God's will, you know, talking about this great weekend of ours. It was part of his plan, you know, to put me where I am today, you know, one of life's mysteries, one of life's great mysteries, right? And of course, when you learn to fly the F4, you know, you're hyperventilating all the time. It's such a beautiful machine. I remember volunteering to taxi it to the compass rose, right? Just so I could taxi it, right? And do all of that. So a great luck, just great luck. I would have loved to have flown the F8 Crusader, the single seater. But where I landed was quite enough, right? With all that great fortune and all those great people. And I have to always go back to that, guys. I am here with you, with my own ups and downs in life, because of the people that have come into my circle and say, "Come here, kid. we need to clean your program up, right? And or teach you how to fly a little bit better, right?" And I had some wonderful instructors. My goodness,
Okay.
Mike Smith in Kingsville.
Yeah.
No better instructor than him, right?
So, and the Mike Smith to whom you're referring was the pilot of the Challenger.
Challenger.
Who passed when she blew up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. What a great human being. We were in El Paso waiting for a fuel truck leaning up against the TA4 BT-21 to answer your question there. And he looked over at me and he said, "Hey, you're about ready to get orders, right?" I said, "Yeah, Mike, pretty soon, I think." He said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Yeah, I want to be a fighter pilot. I want to do that." He says, Good. San Diego, oh yeah, Miramar, right? Top Gun fighter, all that. And he said, and I said, "Well, what about you, Mike? You're about ready to get orders." He said, "Yeah, I've already got orders." I said, "Oh, good. What are you going to do?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to fly A6s and at Whidbey up in the Northwest." And I said, "Mike, that's great. The A6 Intruder, God, that's the all weather, flying at night, that kind of thing." And he nodded, kind of so. I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "Well, that's not what I want to do." I said, "Mike, what do you want to do?" There he is. Look at Mike. He said, "I want to be an astronaut." We're both lieutenant junior grades. We're both little silver bar guys. Right?
Yep.
And this man is telling me that he wants to be an astronaut. Boom. How about that? And how about finding energy and inspiration from yet another great individual like him? There's a lot of magic in my life, and a lot of it was spawned by others and not by myself.
You went over it briefly before we started recording. Can you tell us how it is you wound up in the military instead of the Air Force? Because you were right there by the Air Force base. So
Yes, yeah.
Sorry, Air Force guys, had to do it.
Well, yeah, of course. And you research the programs, right? And I first thought about the Marine Corps because one of my best friend growing up just gone to the Marine Corps, and he's a radio man, point, and took a bullet just above his heart, and did a rescue of two of his Marines, one who had passed away, and then another that was still alive. He brought him out, carried him out, even though he had a rag stuck in his shoulder to stop the bleeding, and he was awarded a Silver Star and a Purple Heart and all those things. But that kind of got me started. Like, all right, if you're going to be a patriot, if you're going to do what your uncles have done in the Second World War, and all those images and movies and stuff that you've seen, if you're going to be a part of that, you better start doing some research, about where you're going to be to do that. And of course, because Bob being in the Marine Corps, I looked at the Marine Corps. That didn't quite work. So I was kind of directed toward the Navy, and as luck would have it, that is where I wound up. One of my mentors back then had been a Navy pilot, and he said, "Al, if you want to be the best you can be in aviation, military aviation, you need to think about learning how to fly aboard an aircraft carrier at night." And I said, "Really, really?" So, and he was very instrumental, in helping me redirect my thoughts, and thank goodness for that, guys. Things happen in a very extraordinary way. There were other episodes in my career, even before I went to the F4 RAG. I was in the RAG, and I'd gone to the Naval Justice School. I'm going to tell you a story, another talk to God, another conversation with God. I was in the RAG as assistant legal officer, not flying, and a pilot came in flight suit, and he had been the maintenance officer in BT-21 when I was there, right? And I knew him, and he had instructed me a couple of times in the TA4, and he saw me sitting there in the desk. He goes, "Al, have you started flying the F4 yet? I said, no, sir, I'm in a pool. He said, how much flight time do you have in the A4? I said, sir, I don't know, 150 hours or something. He said, I've got 4 A4Cs that have been assigned to me at a det in Jacksonville, and I need a pilot. You want to fly? I said,
Yes.
"You bet."
Okay.
Single seat A4, right? And he was coming in to see his buddy, who was the CEO of the RAG, and within a minute or two, CEO Captain McCardle comes out and he says, "Hey, you want to go down there? You have to go, no cost orders." And I just bought a new 69 GTO, right? So
Yeah.
let's go,
See ya.
Yeah, see you. So I went down there, got checked out, and good little airplanes, but they were really old. I mean, old. About 3 weeks into that, we got a call for the det to go back to Virginia Beach, to Oceana, and to do some missile tracking exercise of a couple of ships that were coming out of Norfolk, out of the yards, for us to do the simulations, right? Low levels.
Yeah. Profiles.
Profile. So come Saturday, we finished the assignment, and he comes up to me and goes, "Hey, you got a girlfriend here?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Why don't you keep my airplane? It's one of the better of the 4. And spend here, and on Monday morning, just fly the airplane back to Cecil, Jacksonville, right?" I said, "Great, sir. That's tremendous." I launched out of there Monday morning, went into the overcast at about 3,000 feet, turned south, checked into Washington Center, right at level off at 31,000 feet, in the overcast still, and the engine quit on me.
Oh, shit.
Engine quit. Started with a vibration, and some flickers, and the next thing you know, it was interesting because the power setting for most of those airplanes is 83%, right, on the tack, and 3,000 pounds a minute on the bottom right here, right? So
Keeps it all simple that way, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I'm on the gauges, right, and I'm looking up through the overcast, and I can see the disk of the sun probably just another 1,000 feet above me. And I thought, well, if I can just get on top, I won't have to be on the gauges. Well, hell, I'm not going to get on top. I'm coming back down. I'm coming back down. And it got bad. The turbine, the compressor and turbine section were separating. That big flange and bolts the bolts failed, and thing caught fire, and I had to. It was out of control, inverted up against the canopy. Had to use the alternate handle. Shelled out at 17,000 into a snowstorm.
What?
Of course you did.
What?
Into a snowstorm, and free fell down to 14,000, as you guys know, and chute opened, and I'm in a summer flying suit, right? So descend, I get pelted by ice crystals and slow balls and up drafts and downdrafts. I hyperextended all the cartilage in my chest, ripped the ligament off my left knee, hyperextended the shoulder, the elbow, sprained both ankles, and I come out of the overcast, and now at about 4,000 feet or so, and I'm right over Albemarle Sound, which is a sound that sits there between Virginia and North Carolina.
Yep.
I look down at the Whitecaps, 28 degrees, and that's actually the very first serious conversation with God. And I said, "God, you got me out of the airplane, right? The chute opened, the ejection seat worked, the chute opened, and I've been riding through this frigid weather. And I've got ice crystals on the face, right, and the mask, and I'm looking down between my legs, and I thought, is this it?
Is this how it ends? Is this how it ends?
After what you've helped me with, is this it, right?
Yeah.
And almost comical because I looked over off my right shoulder, and there's an auxiliary Coast Guard station at Edenton, North Carolina, that I could see. Right, I thought,
Dix is
hey, Doc,
pumping his fist.
yeah, why don't you kind of get my tracking based on this wind to get me over there and kind of complete my logbook, so I'm not short of a landing. And wouldn't you know that I couldn't use my right arm to open the escape pack that I had to
Oh, right. Yeah. To release your seat pin and your.
Find the CO2 gap for the. Even if I'd been able to get a raft out, I couldn't have gotten into it anyway, right? But watching the movement of my track over the water, I thought, God, this wind must be 50 miles an hour up here, right? The nor'easter thing. So I remember reaching up and pulling on the riser off my right side, and I cut the canopy. And the next thing you know, I'm going that way, right? I'm going west. And the last two swings of the chute were water, trees.
Oh boy.
Boom, into the trees. And then I just sat there thinking, this is where I'm going to die, right? Because I was in the woods, right? But the ELT had gone off, and they scrambled a helo out of Oceana. And within about 30 minutes, when I was about to just call it a day, they came in, and they came into the woods and picked me up because they couldn't get a hook or a basket through the trees. And off I go. Yeah. And when.
Well, it's all I can say is it's a good thing he left you with the good jet, huh?
Yeah. It's a good day you weren't in one of the pieces of crap.
Man. The real sad thing about those circumstances, and the structure of admin and operations at that level of operation is that shortly after that day, there was a one-time directive to fly that airplane for an engine change.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was the oldest J65-20 in the Navy.
Well, it was, I guess it was due, and you drew the short straw that day.
And there are lessons there as well. I was in a cast for, I don't know, 8 or 9 weeks, maybe 10
Well, you
weeks.
had some, hold on. You had some serious injuries. You said separated, do you say separated breastplate?
Hyperextended all the cartilage in the chest because of the flail injuries, right?
Yeah.
I was out of the seat when I was pinned up against the canopy, and I couldn't use the main.
Yeah.
I had to go between my legs, and out of the seat.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't have some back there with a little seat flap on the way out.
Well, I've got a funny looking tailbone.
Gee, I wonder why.
I'll show it.
Yeah.
And then you said your knee, you had you tore
the ligament in right here. Boom.
Oh my gosh.
Ankles and stuff. But you're young, at the time you heal pretty fast, and they took the cast off, and the doctors, the 2 residents, looked like they were just out of high school there in Portsmouth, right? And they looked at me and said, "Lieutenant, it didn't set correctly. God, my goodness, it hasn't set correctly." And I said, "Well, what happens now?" He said, "Well, we're going to do surgery."
What?
And I said, "Okay." Listen, remember, I'd been the assistant legal officer in the RAG, right?
Right.
And I was seeing all the paperwork coming through about manning requirements, number of pilots required, and they were winding down, right? Thinking that the Vietnam War was going to come to an end or something, and I knew the numbers, and I thought, you know what? If I go in, and I'm in a cast for another 10 weeks, and then have to rehab, I'm going to get rifted. They're going to send me back to Brownsville, Texas. Right? And so I asked the doctor, I said, "Okay, where are my crutches?" And he said, "Oh, they're behind the door." I said, "Can I have them?" Put on my pants. I said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I got to go to the bathroom. So I went back to the squadron, and I was driving this automatic from one of my buddies. He was driving my GTO, my 4-speed. Couldn't use a clutch, right? So I'm driving an automatic back to the base.
Yeah.
And I walked into the CO's office, and he goes, "How'd it go?" "Really good, sir. Really good." "What are you going to do now?" I said, "I'm going to the gym. I'm going to the gym to do some exercises, some leg lifts." Then I went over there. I couldn't do a single lift. I just pulling my leg up, and little by little, I just stayed with it and stayed with it and stayed with it. And so, yeah.
And then you went through the rack eventually.
Then I went through. Yeah, and the first time I flew the F4, I had to shut the engine down. So my instructor that's another guy that said, "Does it ever occur to you that you're not supposed to be doing this?"
Right. You seem to have a black cloud following you around.
Oh, absolutely. And so, I shut the number 2 down, had Oceana, Virginia Beach, summer times. It's hazy, 3 miles clear, 3 miles in haze, right? That's right down the Oceana right now. So I've got to shoot an actual single engine approach back to the base. First time I flew the F4. And I got the same thing from the instructors going, "Don't you think somebody's trying to, didn't you just shell out of an airplane about 300?" That's
Right.
me. But I nailed it. I mean, I was rails all the way down. And that's the last incident I had until I ran out of gas at the mouth of High Point Harbor. That was it.
Oh,
so
man.
yeah, quite the experience, and again, it just all goes back to what I said about combat, and that is aviation, that you're marginally in control and in charge of nothing, right? God says what happens or not,
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Sure.
Wow. Okay.
Well, yeah.
You guys don't want to go on with this anymore. This has got to be depressing, you guys.
No, this is
fantastic.
This is money. This is money, Taco.
This is aviation gold here. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell you, I want to hear combat, what it was like. You obviously heard part of your first early combat there, and then we put it out in the description a little bit, but to surprise people a little bit with some of the rest of your career too, because there's a hint. Everybody, look at Al's shirt. There's a hint as to who he is and all that. But yeah,
I had to pay extra for this.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they'll give you.
Yeah. But I want to take just a moment to thank Derek over at DC Artworks, and then we'll wander into that section of your career. So there I was, thinking I was done decorating my space. Turns out I was just under-equipped, because once you see what DCArtworks.net can do, blank walls start to feel like a personal failure. Our newest sponsor is American-made, veteran-owned, and run by Derek, who builds metal art the way aircraft parts should be built. Start with precision, finish with craftsmanship, and don't cut corners you can't see. Every piece begins as a CNC-cut hardened steel, and that means laser-precise shapes, clean lines, and zero guesswork. Then Derek or his team hand-finish every piece, which is why no two are ever identical. This is not mass production. This is controlled excellence. And if you're wondering how custom they really are, here's the number, 95%. 95% of what DC Artworks produces is built specifically for someone who said, "Here's my idea." The design library on DCArtworks.net updates constantly, but think of it as an inspiration, not a limitation. Squadron logos, call signs, aviation themes, business branding, one-off gifts, or statement pieces big enough to dominate a room. Derek can scale it from personal to commercial without blinking. I've got a set of naval aviator wings almost 2 feet wide, and they are flat out gorgeous. People don't just notice them, they react. That's the difference between decoration and presence. DC Artworks also does powder coating and multi-material engraving, so you get depth, contrast, and finishes that actually look better in person. He's a military GPC vendor. offers bulk and repeat discounts, and is consistently one of the best priced options for this level of work. And because you're a So There I Was listener, there's a permanent perk for you. Go to dcartworks.net, use code STIW, and get 20% off every order forever, even if another discount is already applied. So here's the play. Go to dcartworks.net now, scroll, imagine, and then contact Derek and commission something that is actually worthy of your wall space. Because once you picture it hanging there on your wall, you're already committed. And thanks to dcartworks.net for sponsoring this episode. Fantastic stuff. Thank you. All right. Okay. Somehow. Oh, there we go.
He's back.
He's back. We dropped you off by accident, sir. Welcome home.
Oh, thanks. Can you see me?
So,
Yeah.
Hey, can we pause for just a second?
absolutely.
I'm on my lap. I'm on the laptop and I've got a low battery warning. So I've got to go find my little power cord. Give me about 3 minutes. Is that good?
That'll be fine. Yes, sir. Sounds good. Just as well. My internet is so cruddy today.
What in the hell's going on there today, my friend?
So I'm tethered to my phone. I was in the middle of trying to help Becca get a 1099 from her investment accounts for her taxes, because there's that whole tax thing coming up pretty soon. And then all of a sudden the internet wasn't working, and it hasn't worked since.
Wow.
So I've been on the phone with Fidium. They're telling me they're going to get back to me within 24 hours. That my service is important to them. So there it goes. But yeah, but we're getting there. Oh, this is gold. This has been good stuff here. I was very excited to do this show today. And then the internet conspired against me.
So I think I know, but I just want to make sure we tie the bow with his Vietnam tour. It was one tour in VF-31.
I think so.
I just
154 missions. Yeah.
Are we back? Are we good?
Okay. Good to go, sir?
He's on mute.
Yeah. Well, that would be why. Yeah. I can't unmute you.
Al, you're on mute. And it's self-induced, I think. We can't get you out of mute. You're going to have to do that on your computer there.
Just should be able to go down and tap on the microphone at the bottom of the screen in your picture.
There it is.
Okay.
There you
hear
go.
me?
Yeah.
Pete,
You.
I travel with a modem. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
This little modem is better than my fiber optic Wi-Fi.
Wow.
So consider spending $35 a month. Lifesaver.
Yep.
Think about it. Okay.
Yep.
Anyway, thought I'd
Those
pass
things
it
are
on.
awesome.
You betcha.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right.
So, Taco VF-31 was you were flying F4s. That was your combat tour in Vietnam.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
154 combat missions. The one you was the show opener was off the charts. 11 SAMs being shot at you, and
Right.
was every combat mission like that, or was it were there some? Did it get to be a routine? What was a day in the life of an F4 pilot?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. First of all, I have to say this about combat. First, I've said it. You're marginally in control and in charge of nothing. I firmly believe that if I'd been in a single seater, that I would not have survived. Okay, because I had a guy in my back seat that.
Because most guys say they'd rather have the 200 pounds of gas than a guy in the back seat, but
yeah, unless they're shooting at you. Right?
Well, there's that.
Yeah. And so that to me is really, really important to say and very relevant. I have spoken to the squadron at reunion times, and I've been quick to address the wives and the Rios, the backseaters. And again, to tell them, hey guys, there were so many times at night trying to get back aboard ship where I've got vertigo, can't find up from down. We're running out of gas. We got a sick airplane, and it's the guy in the back seat that keeps me calm, right? That helps me think, that reorients me. I got separated from my flight lead coming into a target, and typically around Hanoi, because my backseater was seeing SAMs that were coming up that I could not see, right?
Wow.
Because what I'm trying to fly wing, begin to roll in, look for the target, see other airplanes going by. And I'm committed to stay right on the wing of my commanding officer and do the job. And then Steve Miller, who I wish I was still alive, would say, now please turn, brake hard, starboard, please. And I go, well, with that tone of voice, here I go to the right. And sure enough, right above us, over several times. And then I, get separated from the boss and your weather. And the next thing you know, you can't find him. You can't find him on radar. And then you get directed by the controlling agency, hey, just hold what you got. We're going to send somebody to bring you home and give you some fuel. And then I get scolded, right, when I get back to the ship. Where'd you go? Why did you stay? Well, yeah, I was doing what I needed to do, and that, of the 154 I flew 90 air to ground.
Wow.
Every time you point the nose of the airplane to the ground, you're going to see stuff coming back up at you, right? Because they're highly defended targets. And there is where you really start to understand, what it means, at what point you cross over a certain threshold of human emotion, where that you've gone through all of that spectrum, starting back on the catapult when you're getting ready to launch off, and then you cross over, right? And that's where some suspended animation kicks in, some muscle memory kicks in, and things basically go into kind of a slow-mo profile.
Interesting.
And you're doing the job, and the stuff's coming up, and you get the standby mark, boom, come 4Gs, and you try to adhere to the rules of engagement, which says do not descend below 3,500 feet, right? Because that's where the light caliber, small arms, and they're there, man. I mean, holy, you look down and say, oh, that's just water buffaloes down there, really, not so much, And so a lot of those times were like that. But, you have a belief in God, even before you even think about you're capable of doing that. When you're so young, I went over there, I had 381 hours of flight time,
Wow.
total. So, no, I'm sorry, 481 hours of flight time, and about
that's better.
Boy, that's a whole lot better than 381 now.
I mean, when you go over there, when you bang off the front of the ship going into combat, you're still learning how to fly the F4, right? So,
Right.
It's magic. It is, and you go back, guys, to the people that you're surrounded by, and who you love and admire and want to be like, and then you just suck it up and you do the thing, because you're a patriot, you're supposed to do that. I was blessed because my commanding officer, who's a legend, directed me to do other things in addition to flying combat. I was the the guy that wrote the flight schedule. I was a flight officer. So while everybody else is sleeping, right, I'm writing the flight schedule. And he directed me to do other things. Some of the initial laser guided bomb work, I was a pilot for that. Certification of the automatic carrier landing system for the Sarah. I was one of 2 pilots that was behind the ship trying to get the ship certified. So I was learning, even in spite of being rocket last. I was a junior guy, right? And that was all intended by him to get me to grow up, right? And I was with him almost to his deathbed about 3 months ago. We no longer, 3 months ago, were commanding officer and JO, but we were brothers, so we were friends. And I learned a lot about that emotion, and that circumstance of life and the reasons why certain things happen. One of the missions, and I'll share this because it's episodal, and it is part of the Vietnam War history. When that certain actress went over to Hanoi.
Yes, we talked about that recently.
Yeah.
Made those statements to the French press. It caused the Paris peace talks to break down, right? As you will recall. I was sitting 5-minute alert on the deck of the ship. 1 hour into the period, I had another hour to go. The admin yeoman banged on the side of the airplane and said, "Mr. C, the skipper wants to see you right now." And I said, "Really? Now?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I've got an hour." Yeah. Somebody's going to replace you. Hurry up. So, I went in, and he's sitting there in his khakis, right? And he said, "Al, have you noticed all the activity on the fantail for the last couple of hours?" I said, "Yes, sir. A lot of helicopters. And I thought it was maybe emergency medical stuff or mail call or something." He said, No. He says, "Hurry up, go down to your stateroom, put on your khakis." I haven't seen my khakis in 6 months.
All right.
Well, the hell they are, right? He said, "Get your khakis, spruce them up. We got 20 minutes or so to be down at Strike Ops." So, I'm the flight, I write the flight schedule. So I hurry up. I woke up my suite mate, and I said, help me find my stuff, right? And so off we go, him and I. We go into strike operations. And every flag officer in the Pacific was in there. More stars than I've ever seen since. The legendary Pac Fleet, who is still renowned. I walked in there and I thought, you know what, we're gonna end this war, because we had the systems aboard ship, if you know what I mean. And so I was introduced. There were only commanding officers and the flight officers in there. So they called condition alpha, which means best airplane, best cruise. And after all the niceties went by, when the CAG was talking, when he picked up that phone that never rings, I still don't know whether he was talking to the White House or the Secretary of Defense. Either one might have been the White House. But they had the pleasantries, and then over to strike operations, and then the teletype started to come through with the order. And it turns out that it's a photo reconnaissance mission. And I opened the book and I said, "Skipper, this is who's next for photo recon." And he said no. So I said, "Okay, well, you decide who's going to go, right?" So the CAG looks over at 4-star and he says, "Sir, we're going to make the assignments. Go ahead." So the CAG looks over at the vigilante skipper and he says, "John, who's going to take it?" And his XO is standing there, great guy, one of the best ever. He had been formerly an A4 pilot with 400 combat sorties.
Oh, wow.
They would not let him go back into the A4 program because of the sorties. So they put him in vigilantes. And here this guy is emergency deployed to Vietnam, right, in the Vigi. And but I'd flown quite a few missions with him and as his escort. And he says, "XO Admiral, I'd like to I'd like to take the mission, but I have a special request. And CAG says, well, what is it, Mick? He says, I want to pick my own escort. I thought, that's interesting, and I'm looking down at the tile, and trying to avoid the glare of all these stars.
Sure.
And the skipper nudges me and he said, look up, Al. So I look up and he's looking at me. And he said, how about it, Taco? You want to go with me? 28 waypoints. 28 waypoints.
Oh.
Going up Happy Valley into Hanoi and going east into Haiphong.
Oh, gee.
Think about that. Only 2 airplanes in the monsoon. Nobody had been in for weeks. And so 2 airplanes.
Oh, boy.
My F4 and his Vigilante. We got to the point where we just turned east out of Hanoi, and we were probably at 300-400 feet, just in turbulence and moisture and small arms and light AAA. And everybody, as soon as we crossed the beach, everybody in North Vietnam knew that we were there. We aborted because we thought that I had taken a burst on the left outer wing panel and that I was streaming fuel, but we couldn't determine clearly what it was because we had so much stuff coming off the airplane, so much vapor, and moisture and stuff. And so he broke it off, which kind of frustrated me because I just put the airplane back upright, and I'm back on his wing and breaking and stuff, and just having the time of our lives, I thought. And we broke it off, landed, and we only got, of the 28, I think we got 18. We had 10 to go. And so we debriefed and we manned up again. We were going to go do it again. And I was about 5 steps from the airplane, and this guy in this white vest with a cross on his helmet, the flight surgeon, right? And he goes, Taco, you're not going anywhere. I said, why?
What's going on?
Ready. Let's go finish this thing. And he said, it occurred to us that you hadn't had any sleep in about 36 hours.
Oh,
yeah.
And there's
So that's normal.
Is that a thing?
Is that a problem to you guys now? So I got pulled, and another great guy, Squadron, takes it. They do the remaining 10. We were put in, Mick and I were put in for a Silver Star for him and a DS, Distinguished Flying Cross for me. They were both denied and downgraded. But the guys that went in and the weather was even better along the coastline, right?
Sure.
And they were the ones that got the Silver Star in the flight.
Oh.
And this DSA, but it didn't matter. Who cares, right? But the beauty about the ending to that was 2 days later, the skipper calls my stateroom, right? And I'm writing this flight schedule. And he said, pack your bags, you're leaving. Just like that. Pack your bags, you're leaving. And I said, Skipper, what do you mean I'm leaving? He says, well, you're going to Saigon. And I go, I'm going to Saigon, sir? He said, yeah, you're going to take your airplane. They're going to clean it up a little bit, an F4. And you're going to courier the photographs to Saigon to a waiting C-141. That as soon as you get there, they're going to take the pouch. He's going to do a 1 stop for fuel, and he's going to go directly to Paris on the order of the president. Go. What an honor.
Yeah.
What an
Wow.
honor. And man, I'll tell you, we landed. I wanted to go into the break there at Thompson, real fast and land this thing. They wouldn't let me. They said, slow down, slow to 150, you got traffic. Well, hell, Garen flaps 3 miles from the airport, you're going to get stuff coming up at you, right? And sure enough, it's ping, ping, ping. And my backseater goes, what, hey, this is supposed to be South Vietnam. This is supposed to be friendlies down here. What the hell's going on? And so we survived that, landed, get to the ramp, and the C-141 is off to my right about 50, 75 yards. Engine 1 is turning, 2 is turning, 3 is turning, 2 is not, because the back door's got to open, right behind the number 2 engine. It opens, and here comes this full bird colonel in dress uniform. And he he double times, right? Really wrecked double times, right? And I'm ready to present the pouch to him. I'm at attention, and I'm going to do this, bring it down, give him a salute, hand him the pouch. when I got to about right in here, he snatches the pouch from underneath my armpit, takes his hat off, and he runs. Doesn't double time. He runs to the C-141. Wow. Think about the urgency of that whole situation.
No time for military courtesy, son. Give me the damn pouch.
Yeah, right. And so as soon as he starts running, they start the number 2 motor, right?
Oh my gosh.
He gets in, they slam the door, they release the brakes, they take a high speed. I mean, they got black smoke coming out of the 4 engines, does a low transition, and then boom, straight up to avoid the small arm stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
We had to spend the night, and we got rocketed. We spent quite a bit of the night there underneath our bunks in this Quonset hut, right?
Oh, geez.
And what was interesting about that, we as aviators, we don't hear the sounds of war.
Right.
We hear the stuff that's on the radios. And a lot of nasty stuff sometimes, right? But we don't hear the sounds of war. We see the concussions, and those kind of things, and sometimes the parachutes or the airplanes coming apart, or all of those other things that really wear on your spirit. But never the sounds, and so here we
In fact, we had the Dos Gringos on, and that was one of the things that they mentioned is that they saw all the flak going around them. It was like, oh, but you can't hear anything.
Can't hear it. You can see it.
Yeah.
But that was a gift, because then you have a different perspective on what those guys on the ground go through. You'll never understand it, right? And you talk about an aviator having PTSD. You have no clue what real PTSD is like, those things down there. So, but what a privilege to have that, in the logbook, right? And again, it's my commanding officer, who says, I need to get this kid over the top. When I got back, I was supposed to go to VF1, the first F-14 squadron. The Navy wanted a second cruise, first combat experienced pilot to go into VF1, into the F-14. And so I was selected to go. About a week before I was supposed to detach, I got called back into, there you go, called back into the fighter wing office. And he's smiling at me, and he goes, well, you got your orders to go to San Diego, but Al, we're gonna send you somewhere else for a little bit, and then after that you can go wherever you'd like to go. I said, well, sir, I'll go wherever I need to go. You please tell me. He says, you're going to do, you're going to be a test pilot. You're going to be in the test pilot world for about a year. And it's a clandestine program at Langley up there in Virginia, right? CIA stuff. And I said, okay. Will I fly? He said, yeah, just come back here on the weekends, to Oceana and take an F4 and go fly somewhere. Well, good. So I started to walk out, and I said, Captain, who's going to take my place? And he goes, let me look. He looks at the paper and says, some guy by the name of Hoot Gibson. I said, the Hoot Gibson? He goes, yeah, Hoot Gibson. You know him? I said, yes, sir. I was in the training command with him. He's a legend. And eventually, we really became good friends. And the reason for it is this. The man who survived all the combat missions with me, my Rio, he was supposed to go with me. So he goes and he becomes Hoot's Rio, right? Well, there you go, Hooter, buddy. He flew with Hoot, right, in the F-14. Steve finished his tour out there in BF1, and he came back to Oceana as an instructor in the RAG, the F-14 RAG. And another sad story, if I may, about 2 months before he was going to get out of the Navy and go back and get a master's in physical education because he wanted to be a coach, right, back in North Carolina. So the F-14 was having problems with fuel leaks right there, at the center section where the two asymmetrical engines sit, right, and there's the defect in there were chronic fuel leaks. And they went out there on a Friday to do the test op after an engine replacement. They got there and there's fuel on the ramp. So the maintenance guys come, oh, sorry, sir. They're both instructors, right? We'll get it fixed. Can you come back tomorrow and do the test flight because we need the airplane out of the ship on Monday? No problem. They came back, took the runway, go through 80 knots, light the burner. Number one catches on fire. Oh. And not a gentle fire either. So, and it was the number one engine. And unfortunately, I'm second guessing, and I apologize for that. But at Oceana, it's Budway 5, which is what they were using. 3214 crosses over. Well, you never turn into the sick engine, right?
Right.
He should have turned right. But I think that when the airplane started to roll a little bit, he saw 3214 go underneath him. Oh. And that maybe he's going to come back around and, tight turn back and land. It didn't work. And so they lost their lives, right? And on that very same day, I was doing an air show. I was in the slot at Point Magoo, almost at the identical time. Had an incident in the air show where it was almost crisis, right? Oh, and I thought, how interesting for Steve and I to have survived all that stuff that we survived, and that we almost could have both lost our lives on the same day,
Wow.
Yeah. And so, what is this about? It's about the lives that we live when we aspire to be unique, when we aspire to be patriots, when we aspire to make a contribution to the best of our ability. Matter of fact, part of my history is that the very last time I flew a Navy airplane, after I flew my last air show in Pensacola, I asked my commanding officer if he would let me borrow one of the airplanes for me to go pay my respects to Steve's widow, and he of course said, absolutely go do that. Just take whatever airplane you want. And, I said, no, I'll just take the number 7 jet. I'll take the 2-seater. He said, no, take the 4 airplanes. I said, no, sir, that belongs to the new number 4 pilot. So I put on my green flight suit, not my fancy dancy tailored flight suit. Right. Put on my green flight suit, and off I went to Virginia Beach, and think about the emotion that is part of an event like that. Right? Think about flying back to Pensacola, and that being the last time you fly a Navy jet.
Yeah, but did you know that was going to be your last flight? Did you know?
Well,
I just worked out that way.
Well, I was leaving the Navy then.
Oh, okay.
And that was another controversy about why, and nothing against needs of the Navy, but what they wanted me to do was to fly my last air show on a Sunday, and then by Friday be at Miramar.
Oh.
Wow.
Okay.
Because schedules.
Monday. Think about it.
It's 2,000 miles away.
Immediate. Here's a change in your orders. you're gonna do this. You're gonna fly your last air show Sunday afternoon. You're gonna go to the end of the season stuff. You're gonna get in your car on Monday or Tuesday, and by Friday you got to be at Miramar. Monday you're gonna be in class. You're gonna be fast tracked to the Enterprise. I think be F-111, F-14s. I was exhausted, guys. I don't mind telling you. I had nothing in the tank. Think about it. I've been fast tracked for 7 years. I've been in a suitcase. Loved every minute of it, but I had nothing in the tank, and I thought this is getting dangerous for me because emotionally, I'm just, my body's just,
you're empty.
Completely, I'm on empty, and I know what empty feels like. I mean, I never felt that before. So I called chief of personnel and I said, is there any chance that you can just give me 10 days leave or something? No, sir. You got your orders. And I said, well, tell me this while I've got you on the phone. How much? I said, I'm at 11 years right now. If I go to 20, how much blue water time am I going to see between now and 20? He said, do you know what the fry is? I said, no, sir, I don't know what the fry is. He said, it's a fitness report index, FRI. I said, oh, okay, sir. He said, I'm looking at your fry. He said, if you go and you do this, you're going to have 7 years of blue water time.
Oh. Seven of the next
6,
9.
7 of the next 9. Yeah.
The next 9, right? And remember, I'd already done 7, pretty intense stuff and very significant stuff, right? And he said, if you do that, when you get to 20, you will be, you're already being fast tracked. And you know what that means? I said, no, sir, I don't know. He said, well, if you don't step on it, this is what you can expect around year 18, 19, 20, 21, which is something that I'd never imagined, and we go back to what our dreams are, guys. How many aviators, Navy guys, Marine guys that said, you know what, they wanted to take me out of the cockpit.
Right. Yeah.
Talking to one.
Yeah.
You're talking to 2.
Yeah.
Back to it.
Yeah.
Giving the parade wave, right?
Yeah.
And now, of course, we all play the hindsight game. Yes.
Yeah.
And there's been so many times, my friends, that I thought, gosh, wouldn't it have been great to keep going, right? And to really define my persona, my soul as further making a contribution, and to have done that, to have been that, right? So now, if you will, think with me, please. There's a framed piece of paper up there that talks about the Aviation Hall of Fame,
Yeah.
and so how do you factor, how do you make sense of all of that? And by the way, you might have seen it on a resume bio. I was invited into the shuttle program.
Actually, I didn't know that.
Missed
Did
that.
you read it?
Oh, okay. No, I missed that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I flew the shuttle simulator and got to know everybody, and went to the all astronauts meetings, and that while I was still flying number 4, I'd come, on a day off and visit with those guys at their invitation. They came out to the Ellington show when I was flying the slot. The director of the flight operations directory and one of the first 4 shuttle pilots came to the air show, and I said, you need to come. And I'm the type of person that if I cannot envision, if I cannot feel it or sense it in my soul, I can't do it. I just can't. And that was in spite of, and by the way, here's another interesting little scenario. I was at an all astronauts meeting. John Young commanded all that, and all the new shuttle guys were there meeting. They had been meeting with subcontractors for the manufacture of the shuttle, and they're reporting back to John Young, right? And I'm sitting there next to the first female in the complement of astronauts, and just amazed, and in wonderment. And I mean, are you kidding me? And the photos around everything from Gemini to Apollo to Skylab. I mean, all these guys, right? And I'm sitting there, and they're about halfway through the table, and the door opens, and who do you think walks in the door? Mike Smith.
Right on.
Mike Smith, and he looks at me, and the last time I saw him was when I got my wings in Kingsville. He came up and said goodbye to me.
That's pretty awesome.
And he rushed around the table, and he got to put his arm around my neck, and then he whispered, "You coming? Are you coming?" And I all I could say was, I don't know yet. And they asked me another time. They were so nice to me, guys. I mean, I swear. I get calls, right? I'm already flying a 727, right? And
Sure.
I get a call and say, hey, now that you've got that experience, flying a big airplane, 727 is about the size of a shuttle, right? Why don't you, we'll give you a job being in charge of the flight operations director, the airplanes, the variable stability Gulfstream, the T-38s, you can teach the guys how to fly the T-38, and fly the Gulfstream, doing the profiles for the arrivals in the shuttle.
Yeah.
And then you can get a degree, because the Navy, when the Navy caught wind of it, they said, hey, you're not qualified to go there. You don't have the academic credentials. You don't have an engineering degree. And my best grades were in math and physics. Who knew, right? But NASA said, hey, just come do this, hang out with us, and have fun doing this. You're in charge of all the airplanes. And then go over to U of H or Rice and, get a degree in math, and, that's enough for us, and if you don't want to do that, just stay in charge of this stuff, hang out with the astronauts. And I could not, and I still have not been able to have a visual, an emotional, spiritual visual that says, I'm in a NASA flight suit. No.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't your path. It wasn't meant to be for you.
Look, John, look at Bob Crippen. Bob Crippen was the one of the top four, and he was their computer, Commodore 64 guru. And I didn't know the first thing about computers back then anyway. So Crippen was really, really smart. The other guy that I really loved was Joe Engel, another one of the top four guys. And I'm bringing names up only to tell you how. Matter of fact, Joe Engel is in the Hall of Fame. Right?
Okay.
His picture's not far from mine, and I remember him going to the Harlingen Air Show when I was flying 3, and he was sitting behind my mom and dad behind in the VIP stand, and my mother's looking around, going, "Where's Al? Where's his airplane?" And Engel, Joe kind of taps her on the shoulder and says, "Oh, he's coming from the left now." Right? And mom thanks him, right? And then he introduces himself, and mom, weeks later, she goes, "There was a man up there in Harlingen in the stands that says he knew you or of you." And I said, "Really?" And I figured probably somebody from Brownsville, right? And it was Joe Engel. So we became really, really dear friends, So
we kind of glossed over the fact that you treated it all matter of factly that you were a blue. No, there you go. Yeah, there's Joe Engel.
Great guy.
How is it you got onto the blues?
Yeah.
What was that process like for you?
Another mystery in life.
right? If
It's
you
a,
only
it's a
knew, right?
mystery, sir.
Right?
It's another life's mystery, sir.
Another, yeah. I was I'd taken an F4 into Norfolk for the F4 to be used as a static display, and the events coordinator at the time for that team had been a air combat maneuvering tactical instructor down in Key West, right? So when I went down to Key West for tactics in the Phantom, we had kind of lived right next door to each other on the beach in Virginia Beach, so we got really close to one another down there, and so I got a chance to see what he was thinking about in terms of the Blue Angels, and he said, "Oh, why don't you think about that at some point in time in your career?" And I said, "Chuck, I'm not that good, man. That's for somebody else, right?" And so now we're out of Key West. He's gone to the Blues as the events coordinator, and I'm in Norfolk, right, chaining down the airplane, and the Blues are getting ready to take off, right, and my girlfriend picks me up, and we go back to the beach, and forget about it. I go back on Sunday to get the F4, and I'm underneath the airplane unchaining it, and here come the Blues, spit polished boots, right? And they're walking right to left, and I'm underneath there in my dirty green flight suit, and one of them kicks me in the boot, and he says, "Hey, are you Al Cisneros?" I go, "Yeah, it's me." So I get underneath the airplane. He says, "Hey, we're interested in you putting in some paperwork for this group here for our team." And I said,
Nice.
"Oh man," I said, "I don't know, never thought about that." I says, "Well, put it in. We'd like to, because we know." He said, "We know who you are." So maybe, right? And then Chuck calls me, about 3 days later from Pensacola. He says, "Did they talk to you?" I said, "Yeah, they asked me. They asked me about paperwork." He said, "Well, do it." I said, "No, man, I don't know. I just really have to think about that." And what it is it's just respect. It's just respect for those guys, and the amazement, that beautiful patriotic thing that you feel that you can't imagine that you can be a part of, out of love and respect and admiration for those guys. And so, I about a month or two later, I did with encouragement from my commanding officer. He said, "Go ahead and do that." He said, "I've talked to the leader." Skip Bump said, and they want to see your paperwork. So I submitted, and I rushed the team for I don't know, maybe 3 months or so. I'd go try to see them on the weekends and stand in the corner and just observe and all that. I got called. Here's an interesting story that's part of Blue Angel history. My operations officer in the squadron in combat, who was still in VF-31, was rushing the flight leader's job for the next year, and I was rushing to be a wingman. Right? Well, on the weekend of the Lakehurst Air Show on the Wednesday, we got a call from the Blues from Pensacola, right? And believe it or not, I was briefing the missile shoot.
Okay.
Remember the missile shoot?
No.
Yeah. That's where the guy who was in the room had told me that maybe I needed to think about something else.
Yes.
Remember?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. That's the issue. So I'm in front of the room, and the phone rings, and the admin guy goes, "It's for you." I go, "I'm busy. Tell me." He said, No. Take a break. It's the Blue Angels, right? I go, "What?" "Yeah, it's Blues." So I go to the phone, and it's a leader. He said, "Hey, Al, we're going to go into Oceana tomorrow afternoon, right? And we want you and Richard to meet us at operations. Okay. You're going to do something that you've never done before as an applicant. You're going to sit in on the arrival brief, and you're going to sit in on the departure and the practice brief. Really? Yeah. And we want you both to be at Lakehurst tonight.
Okay.
Boom. This is on the phone.
Yeah.
Next day, we're standing at operations, man. We got more polish and hairspray and shit all over us, right? We're trying to look good, right? And so here they come. And only 5 airplanes. One of them stayed behind in Pensacola. Hydraulic leak, believe it or not, in that 4. So we did that and finished up. The guys got a drink of water and a little snack, and it's time for takeoff, right? To be there at the arrival time at Lakehurst. I walked out with him as my partner did, as Dick did. I was the last person to shake hands with the slot pilot and the leader before they got in the Blue Jets. In 45 minutes, they were both deceased. They were both gone.
That day?
That day. That day. They were doing, remember, there were only 5 airplanes. They couldn't do a diamond because one of the pilots was missing. So they were doing a little V roll, right? A little 3 airplanes, little V.
Okay.
And it was a roll. And one of the guys nudged the wing of the leader, and it slowed the roll rate down. And in the F4, unforgiving as it is, you cannot slow the roll rate down low level, right? And they hit the ground. One of the crew chiefs that was in the back seat survived the leader's airplane, but the slot pilot didn't. And he had time to eject, but he did not command eject or eject. It didn't make any sense. But we were getting ready. We were getting ready to get in the car and drive. When the phone rang there at the house, and one of my buds called me and said, "Hey, phone's for you." No, we're getting ready. No, the phone's for you. It's a maintenance officer of the Blue Angels. And I went to the phone. He said, "Alan, you're not going." He said, he's just trying to talk. And he said, "We've had an accident,
Wow.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about. For one, we didn't know if the Blues were going to survive or the Thunderbirds were going to survive. We were both in Phantoms, and there was a big study. They grounded both of the teams, and we thought, well, this is the end of the demonstrations, right? And so the big study, and what's interesting about the Navy side of the study said the best airplane for the air show is the F4. But you got to move the airplanes away from one another a little bit, right? Get away from wing overlap and all the anhedral and dihedral stuff off the wings and the tail and stuff. All this stuff there. So and of course the remaining guys come that far apart, and so the hires. I guess CNO jumped in there and said, "No, not the Phantom. We're having a fuel crisis, fuel shortages, and you guys are burning more gas than half the state of Florida." So they put us in A4Fs, and they put the thing. You remember they put the T-Birds and T-38s, and and we transitioned into that airplane. And I got to tell you again, when I've said about having a backseater in my F4 and how important that was for survival in combat, I firmly believe that because of the difficulty of flying the F4 in the air show, in the Blue Angel air show, that I was probably best being in the A4, not the F4 in the demo, right?
Sure. And that was the crash. That was the last time they flew Phantoms, right? After that, it was the A4 switch over. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
I was deselected, officially deselected, because by the new rules, I didn't have enough flight time, to be able to make the pilot. and there you go. John Fogg was one of the survivors, right? But that was that little V right there that he was obviously, as you know, he was in that maneuver. But with the new flight time requirements and the time that passed, I thought, you know what, maybe that's not meant for me again, right? And then I got another call from Pensacola, and they said, "Oh, why don't you just come and see the new airplanes, right? And just spend the weekend here with us. You know, we're not flying. We got da, da, da." Okay, so I can jump in my F4, you know, and go to Pensacola. You know, love Pensacola. So I went, you know, and parked the F4 at the end of the line, and I'm walking by these beautiful A4Fs, you know, just beautiful, beautiful little airplanes, right? F4 empty weighs 33,000 pounds. A4 empty weighs 11,000 pounds.
Yeah, weird, right?
Yeah,
So-
A4 is like 33,000 fully loaded.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sitting right next to the leader's airplane. I mean, you can almost already smell the fresh paint right on this thing, and it's spotless. And I'm thinking, that's a pretty little A4, right? And I remember I'd ejected out of one and trained in another. And so I'm walking back into the hangar, and I stopped before I climbed the stairs, and I thought, God damn it, Al, think about this. And then it occurred, I got a thought bubble that said, how can you want something so much one day and not another?
Okay. Yeah.
So I walked in, and they were waiting. Hey, here's a beer. There's another beer. And they said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I guess I'll put in my paperwork. And the leader says, no worries, we already put it in for you. We already put it in for you. Right. So, and then Admiral Tony Les called me into his office, and he said, well, I got some good news and I got some bad news for you. So, really? I said, what? He said, well, the good news is you're going to be here for 3 years, but the bad news is you're going to be the narrator the first year. I said, oh my goodness, give me that microphone. Right.
Right.
That's all right.
Yeah.
What year was that, Al? 1973?
Yeah, that was
Four.
toward the end of 74. And then I joined them in 75. Yeah.
Okay.
And
So you were there for the bicentennial. You were a blue.
Absolutely. Matter
But
of fact,
that was a hell of a show.
well, think about it. We did the bicentennial in Philadelphia, right? Of all places. But we also did a great bicentennial 4-day show in Chicago.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The estimated crowd in Chicago was 1,700,000 people on the lake.
There, right there. Was Meigs Field the
Well, it was
Air
there.
Show Center?
It was there.
The Navy Pier probably was Air Show Center.
Yeah, they had an artificial flight line,
Okay.
to the north of there. But
Kidding me? You couldn't even get 2 million people to show up for your show? Come on, slacker.
Chicago, man, dude. They were fighting each other on the other side of town. I don't know what they were doing,
Right.
but it was magnificent. And then again, what a privilege, to see faces, that otherwise you would never have a chance to see.
Right.
And let's go back to the Hall of Fame dinner, right? And the faces that I'm looking at in that audience, all of which, are significant, beautiful, beautiful people. And I happen to be this little kid from Brownsville, Texas, standing up there. Are you kidding me?
How did that happen? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, another mystery.
Well, I have to tell you that I've been a Blue Angel fan since I was about 3 years old. When I saw the first show I saw was in the F4, but the A4, in my humble opinion, was the best ever show because the
Right.
way the diamond looked in the A4, just spectacular. And I probably saw you at one point.
You might have. The delta wing of the A4 made it so special.
Yeah.
And I got in smooth air, in spite of the short coupling, and bumpy air and stuff. In smooth air, I can remember being in the hole in the slot and looking around because the airplanes looked like they were welded together.
Yeah.
They looked like they were welded together. All the lines matched, they were even, and the roll rate was perfect. And I thought, I'd have to blink my eyes and go, my goodness. But the air was smooth, right? And the leader had it.
Yeah.
You can tell when there's a good show working. I'll tell you a funny story. I'm in the slot, fingertip, getting ready to do the diamond takeoff. And we're at Moffett. And at the end of the runway, you look across to the south, and there's a big blimp hangar, right? Another portion of Moffett Field.
Yeah.
And right there is a perimeter fence, right? Not but 30, 40 yards away from me. And I'm right there at the edge of the runway, right? And I look over there, and there's a blue pickup truck and a man standing in front of the truck and his little boy on the hood, on the fender of the truck. And he's waving at me, right? And because I'm looking over and I'm waving at him, I give him a hand salute when we roll. That turns out to be Blue Angel boss, Ryan Bernanke.
No way.
But
Like that little kid?
He's 7 years old. And Ryan Bernanke and I, and whether he likes it or not, he'll have to admit it, we're really close friends. Really.
Nice.
Yeah. Matter of fact, he calls me Tio, uncle, right? And so do his kids, right? And I call him mi jefe, my boss, right?
That's
Great disgrace. They spent the night here, when he was leaving the team. But think about how magical that is, right? In terms of how life goes on, right? And things that happen.
A simple little wave.
Yeah.
Put it right here, and he never lost sight.
Never let it go.
That's
right?
That's right.
Never let it go.
Yeah, I'm real close.
How easy would it have been to just look over and go, there's a kid
I'm busy.
over there. I'm busy. I got shit to do. No, but you waved, you saluted.
It happens for a reason. It really does. That is what is crafted by our Lord. That at some point in time, it has a meaning, and I think that's what's happened quite a bit. My circumstance, when Boss Bernanke was the lead when they lost the number 6 pilot up there in Tennessee, and because I was on the team in '77 when we lost our number 6 pilot, and I was the guy that that was charge of stuff and directing us to get right back in the airplanes and go fly again. And we took a day off, and then there you, boss. How are you, sir? How are you?
Got a picture of him up on the screen.
Yeah. He thanks for showing me that again. They were having a hard time getting back in the airplanes, because of the differences in time, events, social media, so much attention placed on them. Great response from the community of Smyrna. Very difficult for them to go back in the air. And it got to the point where I got a call from one of the admiral's exes and said, "Al, call them and talk to them. We need to get them back in the air," right? And so I got another call, and he says, "Hey, I've been invited to go to the Memorial Park and be in attendance and speak alongside some of the Blue Angel guys." And he said, "Al, what am I going to tell them? What are we going to tell the public? First of all, what am I going to tell the team to encourage them to set aside all of this and get back in the airplanes, because you have to get back quickly." I said, "Tell them this.
Yeah.
Tell them that before you're Blue Angels, that you're warriors, that you're there to represent America. You're there to represent the United States Navy as warriors. And it's your obligation to this community and to the United States Navy and Marine Corps to strap those airplanes on again. And that's exactly what one of the Blue Angels pilots said. The next day, they got in the airplanes.
Right.
Let me also say this, where I am sitting in the book on the historical list of Blue Angel pilots, 80 years worth. I have had the privilege of knowing every single one of those leaders except for two. And I've seen every leadership style that you can imagine. I've seen the great ones and I've seen the ones not so great. I've seen some of the greatest pilots in the world and some that are not so great, but it's part of that human existence that occurs. The two that I've not met were the second ones. I think you might have heard this before, Peter. The second leader flew his last air show, turned in his wings, and went to Australia to marry the most beautiful girl that he'd ever seen. And that was the end of his career. The second one that I did not get a chance to meet was the one that was killed in Korea. The Blues were disbanded back in '51, and they created a squadron for them, and that leader was killed in Korea. Those are the only two I've not met. And what it means for my awareness or my sense of all of that dynamic, 80 years worth, is that when there's a reputation of a team being really, really good, they don't know who the wingmen are. They don't. They know who the leaders are, because it boils down to leadership, right? And a leadership style and all of that, that is like my commanding officer in Vietnam. We flew 2,200 sorties while we were over there, and we didn't lose an airplane. We got some banged up. We had to leave one behind, but that was because of leadership, and to the very end, I mean, he was my leader, right? My job was to protect him while we were over there. But I grew and learned from him. And so the success of that is similar to the success of the great Blue Angel teams, leadership. So as a junior officer, as a wingman, what do you learn? What do you learn going further in life? My business, as I lead my companies, it's about what I've learned, and how to care for others. The mantra, corporate culture, 2 words: love and relationships. That's it. If you make money, great. If you don't, you're on the right path anyway.
There you go. Well, I need to ask you this because I've asked every other Blue we've ever had on the show, and I think you may have already kind of answered it, but what do you think is the most difficult position on the team to fly?
The leader.
There you go. Yeah.
The leader, no question.
That seems to be the you'd always think, well, it's harder to hold, right wing or left wing or,
Well,
leaders, it all revolves around him, huh?
It just, at the end of the day, he's the one that goes to sleep at night going, oh, Jesus, man, I didn't do well today. Tomorrow's going to be a tough air show, right? It's going to be over the water. I've got to be careful of this. He doesn't go, he wakes up with the same concerns, the same fatigue, the same issues of complacency, or I don't feel good. I think I'm catching a cold. When in my third year, the leader got sick and got the flu. Right, we had already started a training program, and he was out for 10 days. He was really sick, a little bit of strep, a little bit of this, that, and the other. And so I was asked to take the new guys, number 2, 3, and to fly with them, to teach them the profiles, the reversals, not the overheads, but just the circular stuff.
Well,
right?
to keep their hands on the stick.
Absolutely. And the formation sets, right echelon, left echelon, right, and diamond, delta set. I did that for 10 days, and it was wonderful because it forced me to already take a skill that I thought I had and really work harder on making the calls and then doing the thing rather than making the call and doing it at the same time.
Yeah.
There's a word for that called the historian, right? Anytime my leader would do something concurrent, here you go. All right, boss, you're being a historian, you're saying it, and then you're doing it at the same time, and we're not ready for you, right? So, but I learned about that, but I learned how important it was to make that airplane just dance, just absolutely be magical for those guys. And they took to it, right? Absolutely took to it, which was a great benefit, an experience for me. And after I left and they stayed on, they'd call me and go, can you come back and do some of that stuff again so we can go have fun? Right? And I go, yeah, I wish. But the leader, the solos have a very dangerous job, and the accident record bears that out. When the left wingman has a new leader, his job is really tough. I had that job. The lady who came to the Blues a couple years ago, that was her first.
Stalin.
Yeah, it was her first job. She went 3 and 4, and I had a chance to visit with the team before she got started. I said, like, please know that she's got a brand new boss up there, who's learning the profiles, and we never fly on the left wing, right? We don't. We found.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to get into a break, but that's 20 seconds out of a day.
Exactly. You're straight level. And if it's got to be a right brake, right? And almost always it's a left brake because Navy pilots can only turn left, right?
Only one direction. Only one.
That's it. Only left. And so I talked about that, encouraging them to be aware of if she has any kind of concerns or issues that they're, hey girl,
there she is,
Amanda Lee.
Yeah, she's a tall girl. She's really tall.
Yeah.
Did a great job, and they work with her extremely well, because she needed to succeed, for the sake of the program and the Navy and herself. For herself, most important.
The first female pilot in the demo team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, tell me if I'm wrong, but here's how I believe you can tell that she did well. They didn't leave her at number 3; they put her in the slot.
Put her in the slot. Yeah.
You don't put a slacker in the slot.
Exactly, and that's
not that there's any slackers on the Blues, but
there have been circumstances.
Poor choice of words.
Where a 3 either stays on the wing or he's released, or because there have been 2s that have gone to 3, right? Mm-hmm. And there have been 3s that have disappeared, right? But the normal progression is for 3 to go to 4. When she went to 4, she was ready. There's no question about it. And the boss was in his second year already, for that new team, and she did extremely well in the slot. The slot is quite a bit easier to fly than the left wing or the right wing. The left wing person, get that? never sees the ground. The turns are always into you. Right. So when they turn into, you're seeing the sky, right? And every now and then the sun will just burn your eyes when you go through that. And then down the backside, you're just so riveted on seeing the leader that it's swoop, and then the reversal back into you over and over and over and over again. There were times in the A4 where I had, as number 3, I'd have to call the boss and go, boss, wings. We get to the bottom, and I didn't know whether we were really completely wings level or not, right? Because through so many rolls and machinations, and sometimes when it's hazy, you really don't have sky.
reference, right?
Yeah, you know. So
It
you're
is.
just flying around in a fog bowl.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so, and then he'd wait and pause, go level. You know, and I just kind of correct everything in the cockpit and go, okay, now I'm level. Here we go again. Turn into me
Okay.
again.
I got two questions
Okay, what?
because I'm beating repeat to it. You know, we've asked all of our guests that have flown on the Blue Angels these same questions.
Yeah.
Best part about being a Blue Angel.
Well,
Best part about being on the team.
first of all, the Blue Angels, being a Blue Angel is a gift that keeps on giving. No question about it. You know, so you have to bring that into the discussion, right? That privilege. Now, in the moment, the best thing is, and I coined this phrase again when I was on the team, is the best thing is that you did the thing, you survived it, right? That's unequivocally the best thing. The hardest thing is being an applicant, right? Because think about it, you are a good pilot, but you're in a squadron with better pilots, better F4 pilots, more combat, more distinguished, and you know that they're better than you are. Landing grades aboard the aircraft carrier day and night. Same vintage, same year group, if you will. But you think, based on some ego part of yourself, that you're good enough to be a Blue Angel. And you define that, you declare that when you make an application. That is difficult. It really is. Really is. And then what happens is when I got selected and I'm in the med in bad weather with a wingman that I'm trying to make sure he doesn't fail. I'm calling him for naval aviation and he's failing. And we're having problems with him getting aboard and not hitting the water. And everybody on the ship knows that I'm going to go to the Blue Angels.
Oh boy. Yeah. So there's a little pressure there.
Everybody's watching on the cat, on the videos, and it's Al Taco's out there with this guy. And he almost hit the water. You know, now he's running out of gas and the tanker's running out of gas and Al's not going to have enough gas to land. And I mean, it's just, you know, all of that is in that box of things that that come with that distinction, if you will. But when you do that, and you better know that even today as we speak, there are guys that were in the air wing with me that I'm dear friends with, and others will say, if he can be a Blue Angel, I could be a Blue Angel. Right. And there's some truth to that, you know, because you get guys, single seaters, you know, guys in difficult airplanes that go out at night, no diverts, run out of gas, single seaters, nobody to help them, talk them, and they're great. They're great guys, and I know so many of them, guys. Make no mistake about it. The opportunity to sit here and talk to you guys is a privilege. This is a gift that keeps on giving. I'm with you because of this. That is a gift.
That is a great answer.
Yeah, fantastic.
Great answer.
It's humbling.
Who's that guy?
There we go.
Well, you know what? My brother found that on the internet about 3 years ago. He says, "Hey, I found this. It's supposed to be you." Well, that guy's pretty skinny. I don't know that that's me, but
There's your narrator season that oil painting there.
You know, quick story about narration. First narration at El Centro, California. Ready?
Yeah.
My first narration.
Did you call the right city? Hello, Detroit.
Where am I? Look around, right? I've got the mic. It's my very first narration. The base CO is right in front of me, and to his left is a Mexican general, right? And they're 30 feet in front of me, right? And I go, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The United States Navy and its Flight Demonstration Squadron welcome you to this first Blue Angel of the 1975 season." And then I step forward in front of the CO and the general. I go, "Buenas tardes, damas y caballeros. Bienvenidos a esta exhibición de Los Ángeles." And I looked down at the general and said, General, mi general, my general, bienvenido. CO of the base just goes, oh my God, what an intro, what a way to welcome this guy. And so that goes back into all of the things really that have been part of that experience. Being the first Hispanic Blue Angel pilot, and the many hundreds of times that I've been asked through the years, how did it feel to be that, right? And the beauty about being Hispanic and having the correct upbringing and the right awareness of both cultures, that going forward, you can give the best of those cultures to those that you're with. And it's significant really for recruiting, for Navy, Marine Corps, imaging, and the kids, the kids. It's about the kids.
Oh yeah. That's what hooked me, man. The Blue Angels hooked me when I was like 4.
Yeah. There's so many great stories that all of us on the various teams have, where they'll meet a little kid, right? And you sign an autograph or you talk to him a little bit more, and he never forgets it. And then he'll have a brochure, right, that you signed for him. And sometimes yours is the only signature on it. I had the same thing when I was at Southwest as a training captain. And I got called and said, hey, go drive to the airport at Hobby and get on an airplane, and there's going to be a kid coming from the training center, and you're going to train him for a month. Okay. So, and it's a Friday, airplane is already loaded. Everybody's drunk in the back because the bar's been open back there for 3 or 4 hours waiting on, not 3 or 4 hours, for about an hour waiting on this new pilot. And finally he's coming down the jetway, boom, 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 boom. And it's summertime, but he's in his winter flight suit, uniform, got his hat on, right? Book bag, suitcase. And he comes in, he puts his stuff down, and he's trying to locate things, trying to figure out where things go, right? I've already done the walk around, got the flight plan, talked to the flight attendants, tell them to close the bar and get ready to go. And the guy on the headset going, Captain, can we start the motors? We have an airplane waiting for the gate. I said, yeah, give me about 3 minutes, okay? Okay, all right, Captain, boom. So I'm watching this guy, and he finally locates where to put a suitcase and the book bag, and he sits down, and he's still got his uniform on, his jacket, right? And I go, hey, I got it taken care of. Don't worry. Go ahead and hang up your coat and get your book out, and we're going to do a checklist, right? And the door slams. The flight attendant says, Al, can we leave? Come on, please. It's time to go. Okay. All right. We're going to go real quick. So I call for the checklist, right? And so I go, give me a before start checklist. So I hand him the checklist, and then he looks at me, right? And he looks at me, and I go, go ahead. It's a challenge and response thing, right?
Yeah.
And he looks at it, and he says, Captain, can I show you something? I go, yeah. Hurry.
Sure. Yeah.
Tell me what it is, okay? Yeah. What is it? And so he takes his book off of the book bag, he puts it on the console, gets in there, and he pulls out a Blue Angel pamphlet.
Get the hell out.
He opens it.
That is awesome.
He says, you're the only one who signed it for me.
Hairs on my arms are standing up.
I know, right? Oh.
So he's been carrying it around with him forever.
Turns out that he is one of the best pilots flying today.
Wow.
He followed, he knew where I was, what I'd done. He had joined the Navy. They told him that he had some astigmatism, so they wouldn't put him in the front seat, so they put him in the back of an F-14. He kept flying in the flying clubs, forced the Navy to give him an upgrade into the front seat.
Yep.
Finished, went to fly for a little TWA in St. Louis in the feeders,
Yep.
knowing that what he wanted to do was to go to Southwest. And he did exactly that. And now he has helicopter rating, C rating, 6,000 jumps out of airplanes, master instructor in jumping out of airplanes, and one of the best pilots at Southwest Airlines.
That is
that kid.
fantastic story.
That kid. He was at my induction at my table.
Oh,
Wow.
fantastic. Okay.
Because that you pay back.
Yeah.
You pay back. And
Wow. I did not see that coming, Taco.
No, neither did I.
Not see that coming. I
Isn't
got
that
tears
great?
in my eyes.
isn't that wonderful? Isn't
Yes.
that, you know, and what it is I flew, I got to tell you this, man, shit. My last month, he put himself in my right seat for that, my last month,
Wow.
you know, and you talk about piece of cake, the most natural aviator that you could ever meet. The very first time that I flew with him, even then, situational awareness was perfect. He knew it. He got it. Because he'd been in a tougher environment over at little TWA, right? The feeders. And those are the best pilots that come to the mains. Those guys, right?
Well, that is a I mean, you talk about tying the bow on a story.
Right.
I wasn't sure where you're going with hey, you know, maybe there's only one signature on a, you know, the kid only gets one autograph on a pamphlet.
Yeah.
Wow.
His dad, he said, my dad said, because he's from down in the valley, you know, where I'm from. And his dad walked him in front of my airplane. And he was, I think, 11 at the time, something like that. And he said, you see that man? He's from your hometown. His dad was working at a chemical plant, Celanese plant down there by the port. And he said, you see that man? I know his dad. I used to work for his dad when I was a kid. He is a little Mexican guy. He's a little Mexican kid. If he can do that Blue Angel thing, you can do anything too. That's what his dad told him.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
You know, go, okay, thank you very much, sir. Good, kind of good advice, right? But,
Wait a minute. I've been insulted.
No, that is
If he can
Al,
do it,
that
you
is
can do it.
just a fantastic. So thank you for sharing that. That's
It is.
that is I mean, you are just full of these good stories. We've been talking
Yeah.
for 2 hours and 7 minutes.
oh,
And
I'm
it
sorry.
seems like
Feels like
seems like
maybe
we've been
20
talking
minutes.
for about 20
Yeah.
minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just overran the clock. I'm sorry.
No, there's no time.
No, this
Hey.
is gold. This is
It's
why
truly
we
a-
do the show.
It's truly an honor to get to, first of all, to hear your stories in person. And now they're going to be in perpetuity because it's digitally recorded.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
When you cut it and splice it, and some of it lines up on the floor like the old days, right? How long will it be? Will it be like an hour?
So
Oh,
I'm thinking, no. So it's all going. The only thing that I'll take out is, you know, for instance, when we took a couple minutes for you to get the charger
cord.
for your
The
computer,
charger
because no
cord.
one wants to hear that.
Yeah.
But everything else goes in.
Yeah, man.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is, you
So-
know, the venue.
Yeah, I may
our
cut it
venue
into
is-
2 shows, 2 different weeks.
It's
In
like
fact, I'll likely do that.
we like to consider this. We're sitting at the Oak Club, you know, and we're swapping flying stories. Only today we're just listening to yours.
Oh man. Well, when do I get a chance to listen to yours? Do I need to go see you guys or what?
Yeah. Nobody
No
wants
one
to hear.
wants to hear us.
Nobody wants to hear our
Yeah.
stories out.
Actually, I think it was last week. It was just Fig and me. Yeah.
yeah, we were
we were
talking
bullshitting
about
about different stuff that we've seen and done. And I think we talked a little bit about the LaGuardia crash and how easy all those holes were to line up, as terrifying as it was and is.
Yeah.
I opened the show with a story of I was at 50 feet on final that night and froze. And then the instructor goes, "You notice anything wrong here?" And I'm like, froze
he was in the
simulator,
simulator.
that is,
right?
you know?
Froze the simulator.
And I'm like, yeah, no, I don't see anything wrong. And so he turned it from daylight to nighttime to daylight in the simulator, and bigger and shit. There was a jet sitting in position on the runway. I was about to hit it. but couldn't see it. And they had, I was either in the goo or they somehow distracted me by putting that taxi jet on the runway off the taxiway.
Yeah.
And could not see it.
I was at a hold short. I was holding short, not hold. Excuse me. I was in position and hold.
Yeah.
In a 7-3.
Yep.
I'm in the left seat. It's at night, right?
Yep.
And tower says, Southwest, hold your position. And in that moment, a business jet flew right over us and landed 1,000 feet ahead of us.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And he didn't even check in. There's no recording of him a tower freak. He might have been he might have been on ground control.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's but it's amazing how little things like that can happen. And I think if I've told this ever so briefly, flying with this guy, and he's since retired from my airline as well, but he said he'd been flying all week with this guy, like 3-4 nights in a row, and he had a new first officer this next night, and they were taxiing up the taxiway, and there was an Airbus about 200, 300 yards in front of them, and the first officer, they're all waiting in line, all lined up, waiting in line. First officer steps on the brakes, brings the airplane to a stop.
Oh,
so, it stopped up there. So he sets park and brake and waits. Bus starts moving. He's like, takes park and brake off, starts taxiing again. About 200-300 yards short of that Airbus, the first officer stands on the brakes, brings the airplane to a stop. He sets park and brake, looks over at him, goes, "Am I making you nervous?" He goes, "Well, yes, sir, a little bit." He goes, "There's plenty of room between us and the Airbus." He says, "I'm not worried about the Airbus. I'm worried about the Learjet down there you keep trying to run into."
Oh, my word. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
Can't see the forest for the trees,
Yeah.
You're looking.
He said, "My blood run cold." He says, "I didn't have a problem staying awake the rest of the night. The adrenaline shot that gave me just..."
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I've got another story that I need to tell you off record if I can.
Right on.
Okay.
Off record?
Off record. Yeah.
Off record.
All right.
Okay.
We'll do it. We'll do it after we go silent then. So
Okay.
sorry,
All right.
folks.
Yeah.
Some of these we just don't share.
Some of it is what they call
Can't.
privileged information.
Yeah. We just can't.
It's a beautiful story, and there's there's a lot of great reward of that circumstance and the things that move forward beyond that. Very significant.
Okay. I have another Blue Angel service question for you.
Yeah.
Do you recall, can you tell of, I know it's been a minute, but some things seem like yesterday. So is there a time you can tell us of when you were on the Blue Angels where there was a very humorous thing that you remember vividly?
Humorous.
Like a lawman, he told us a story of when he was brand new and they were on the way to El Centro for winter training. So it was the first time he was putting on the blue fitted suit to go fly. They stapled it all together with like 5,000 staples.
Yeah.
So I did, something like, do you recall being a part of anything like that?
Well, not really. There are certain things that would happen right on the road, but nothing that really sticks in my mind.
That's probably a good thing then.
Yeah, really. The things that really stick are the ones that are real difficult. Difficult ones to deal with, right? And almost always it's in-flight related stuff. But we can talk about that, sometime in the future as well, right?
I'd love to have you back and do more of this. Absolutely.
Oh, goodness. You guys are crazy. No way.
What about
2 hours and 13 minutes?
Yeah, and then you believe it?
Yeah, there you go. What let me ask this. Would you spend a lot of time in the weight room even back in the mid 70s? Was that part of your?
Not as much as the current team. I think the current team is obligated to at least 5 days a week, maybe 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And you can tell the way those guys are shaped. We were in great shape, no question, especially while we were in El Centro. We'd brief at 5 in the morning and release breaks at 7, and we'd be done by about 2 in the afternoon, 2 flights a day. And then that would give us a chance to go for a run and go to the gym, run over the gym, and that we were in really good shape. But it wasn't mandated because of the G loads. It was just, you need the stamina. You need to be able to endure this for the next.
Yeah.
Oh, the days are
lot.
Yeah, the days.
2 days wasn't enough of a workout, I guess.
And we do it for 13 days, and if we were on time, on schedule, we'd take a day off. If not, we keep going. But I think that no doubt you guys have been told that toward the end of the season, you are just really tired.
Yeah.
Really, and that's just the nature of things, and so you have to really be careful and be aware. One of the things that I always tell the new guys, especially the new boss, I said, boss, look at the accident records, right? Look at the history of the team. Throughout the years, when do the accidents happen? Close to finishing winter training, because now if you're not ready, you'd really try to work harder at it, faster, lower, whatever. Yeah. And then sometime around September.
Yeah, towards the end of the air show season.
Right there, where summer's been brutal, you traveled, you're in and out, and then you start getting a little bit complacent. Oh, I've done this diamond roll 1,000 times.
Getting comfortable.
Getting too comfortable, right?
Yeah.
I've seen when I was 7, I've seen, maybe when I was an applicant, but I've seen a diamond roll where the left wingman, where the leader's like this, and the left wingman is like this.
Oh.
The boss says, "Okay, we're going to roll now." Say again.
Yeah.
Oh crap.
And when was that? That was in September, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of it. And I was there in the debrief, and it was like come to Jesus stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I will share stuff with you later about some of that as well. And when you are finished with it and you put it all in a recap, you thank God. You just thank God. You thank God for the opportunity. You thank God for being able to listen to your mother's prayers, be it either in combat or the Blue Angel experience. All of it factors in. All of it. We are here not by accident. You guys have done something amazing in your own careers. All predestined.
Right.
You've survived. You survived the times that you got a little slow in the turn as a kid, and you didn't know anything about energy or approach turn stalls or any of those things, and you survived. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
In spite of our best efforts.
In spite of your best. That's another great line. That's another great line. Top Gun Maverick. Oh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, sir. Oh man.
Wow.
All right. Well,
what do you say we land this plane?
We ought to do it. Yeah.
Let's land the jet.
Land this plane and get you back, Al, because
I forgot.
I forgot
what the tolerances are on the fuel gauge. I'm beginning to question my, how much fuel I got left.
Right.
That's how we opened that. That was the opener.
Yeah.
I soloed 176. Yeah. Yeah, that one. That's my. I used to think that was the biggest airplane in the world.
Right. This is the fastest, most badass airplane ever until you get in the next one, right? Nieces
and nephews I adore. Oh,
nice. Well, fantastic.
Well, it's been a true honor and a privilege to meet you, speak to you. I look forward to meeting you in person someday. And thank you for sharing with us.
Thanks. Thanks.
Indeed. Well, we need to thank you for your service, especially, and all the inspiration that you provided to so many that then went on to serve as well. And thanks to all those on active duty now, putting themselves in harm's way, and for their families who sacrifice so much so that they can do that distraction free. We, as a nation, are indebted. We don't know them all, but we owe them all. As Stick says, we have a debt to you that we cannot pay. We can only say thank you.
We got to throw out a thanks to Dave Hamilton, backbeatmedia.com. He gives us the bandwidth, the know-how, what else? Repeat. The advertising.
And advertising helps find advertising. Yeah. So, Backbeat Media has been a backbone for us from the very beginning. And we're grateful to Dave Hamilton at backbeatmedia.com for that. So, Patreon. Thank you to all the wonderful folks who have lost all sense of financial responsibility, cracked their wallets open, and put money in our pocket. We don't understand why you do it, but we're humbled by the fact that you do when you get to help keep great shows. And you know what? I'm beginning to understand, because when a great show like this comes along, I understand people want more and they want to help keep that coming. And you're sacrificing your hard-earned money to help us do that. This is not a cheap endeavor, and we appreciate all the money that you give us. So we have SoleraWest.us/donate will get you to our page where you can donate via Venmo, Donor Box, or Patreon. And we try to notify you ahead of time when we're going to have recordings, that sort of thing. The cool thing about Venmo is they take a smaller cut when you send us some money. So if you're just going to give one time, we'd appreciate the Venmo. So,
speaking of sending money, we do question your judgment, but we are so very humbled that you do donate. Hey, we have a merch store. Matter of fact, I'm wearing one of our hats. Listen, we have a bikini.
You didn't say bikini.
We have a bikini, and it's almost bikini season again. But hey, so there I was.us/merch. If you want to take a look, it's got our logo on it that was designed by Stix, who's in the background doing our production work. Thank you, Stix.
Thank you. And while we're thanking Stix, thank Bago. Bago couldn't be here today, but Stix and Bago both do a bunch of work in the background for us to make the show come off flawlessly. And if you think it's damn close to flawlessly, get over to StarWars.us/rate and throw 5-star rating on the show. And if you feel like you must give a 3-star rating, find another show, give it to them, come back and tell us what we can do better, and give us 5 stars, and we'll take care of it.
Right?
We're trainable.
Somebody else. Yeah, we're totally trainable.
Yeah. Oh, nothing less than 5 stars for us, please. We beg of you. And subscribe to us on YouTube. Subscribe to us in podcast. Subscribe anywhere you can. And please share the show. Go hold people down at gunpoint and make them listen to our show.
Whoa.
Okay.
Maybe not
leave the gunpoint out.
But hey, share the show. That doesn't cost you anything. Nothing.
No, exactly.
Share it, baby.
No taking hostages allowed.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Hey, Brad Silcott, he's here today. Thanks for being here today, Brad. But at BDS Aviation Photography, the man is a true artist. He lets us use his photos on our website and on our show, and want to shout out to him. Thanks, Brad.
Indeed we do. So, and then a thank you to Derek over at DCArtworks.net for sponsoring this show and for all the amazing stuff that he does for us. It's incredible stuff. Anything else, Fig? I think that's probably it, huh?
No, hold on. I hear in the background there, that's the F-16 pilots that make the Air Force sound good. The Dos Gringos, the 2 of them. They got 4 albums. There's not a bad song on any album, and if you're having a bad day, you need to listen to a little Dos Gringos song. They're fine patriots. They've been on our show twice, and they make great music.
There you go. All right, everybody. Till next week, the best advice we can give you is stay safe and check 6.
There I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. 'Cause when you're going down in the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
Oh, hold on, it's what?
He said it's over.
I just want to tell you both, good luck. We're all counting on you.
I never know what's coming.
I know.
I never know what's
weird.
coming.
Out.
Woo!
Fantastic. All right, everybody.
Wow.
Let's see real quickly. Look at some comments. So Badass is there. Good. It was a great episode, Badass. You are correct. I'm glad you could join us. Coos TV. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Thanks for the service, Taco. He says.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Absolutely. And Dizzy. Yep. Excellent. Good stuff. All right, everybody. I hate to do this, but I am tethered to my phone, so I'm probably running out of data. So I'm going to turn the stream off and say Happy Easter to all of you. And we're going to record it Thursday the 9th. So join us then. Chat with you soon. Take care.